Welcome to the last Negroes at Harvard, podcast number 7. There were 18 of us. We are now pushing 80. We were in the Harvard College class of 1963. I'm Kent Garrett. In this episode, we talk politics with longtime former news anchor Larry Sparano. Larry says he's a liberal Democrat, but he sounds like a trumpet to us. Fred, how are you and how was your week and what's going on?
I had a terrific week here in Prior Lake, Minnesota. And the week coming up is even better. It's going to be in the high 80s and sunny. So I'll get to work on my tan.
On your tan, all right. How about Jerry? How are you?
The week has not been quite as good. We've been at 109 and 107, and we've got fires surrounding us. But I'm in Pasadena, California, outside of LA, but it's not nearly as bad as it is up north in the San Francisco Bay Area. They have a real problem. Over 300,000 acres have burned so far.
Wow, that's amazing. George, how are you?
I'm doing well, Kent. I'm in Atlanta still. Will be for the foreseeable future, and trying to make sure that my ballot gets counted.
Right. Last time you told us you were working on a science project. What's that about? Just quickly.
So now that I no longer have an active laboratory, I am confined to doing in silico projects. So I have been working on a project related to protein evolution and a process that's called horizontal gene transfer, which is essentially the transfer of genetic material directly between organisms as opposed to via the route of inheritance.
I have transferred some genes horizontally.
That's not what he means. How about
not quite, Freddie?
How about you? How are you, John?
Well, I'm here in Ann Arbor, Michigan. I guess nothing too much is going on here. The vectors of the virus are expected to come on campus this weekend, Monday, and everyone is waiting around town in fear of how much virus the kids will be bringing and who is going to get on.
Wow. Yeah. Well, our guest this session is Larry Sparano. He's a longtime anchor down at Fox 40 News. He is also a investigative reporter, and he and I worked together for about 7 years down in Binghamton at Fox 40 back in the day. And he is a guy I pretty much disagree with about on everything. But aside from that, he's a great guy. And how are you, Larry? Where are you calling from, and what's the story?
I'm calling from Scranton, or as the natives say, Scranton, Pennsylvania.
Well, let's start off with where you guys think we are in terms of the election. Larry, why don't you start? Where do you think Biden and Trump stand right now at this moment?
You know, as we've said in our discussions on WIOX, I think this one's hard to call. Now, as you remember, and as I remind you periodically, I called Trump's victory 4 years ago when you thought I was nuts. And I said at the time, if he gets the nomination, he's going to be the next president. I was certain then. This time, I don't know how it's going to turn out. There's still a lot of things in play. A lot of pluses for Trump, a lot of minuses for him as well, and vice versa with Biden. So I'm not sure at all what's going to be the final outcome. And I think a lot's going to depend now on the debates, if there is a debate, and how people see who's really to blame for the spread of the coronavirus. So these are kind of like unknown elements at this point.
Right. How do you feel, Fred?
I believe, God, I hope Biden wins. I don't believe the democracy can withstand another 4 years of Donald Trump. I don't believe it can stand another 4 months of Donald Trump. So I'm hoping I live until November 3rd so that I can vote against him. And I'm hoping that Ruth Bader Ginsburg lives past January 22nd so that he does not get to replace her as a lame duck president.
Jerry, how about you?
Well, I think it's really going to depend on half a dozen swing states is what it amounts to. And I think things are going to be a lot closer than some of us would hope. Right now, it certainly looks like Biden has a substantial lead in most of these swing states. But I think it will get closer and closer as we get to the election. One of the things, Larry, that really puzzles me, and I'm not talking about the evangelicals, but the white, non-educated, by non-college educated working class, why they are so strong supporters of Trump. When I look at my family, all my aunts, my uncles, my father, etc., none of them went to college except for my mother. But they were not ignorant, I will put it that way. They knew what was in their self-interest. And when I look at Trump, when I look at things like trying to do away with the Affordable Care Act or not pushing for a higher minimum wage, this works against their self-interest. Why are they such strong supporters?
I think because they don't really see it that way. As I mentioned previously, what they see is that they've been disenfranchised. Now, although Kent doubts the truth of what I say, I've been a lifelong liberal Democrat. But, you know, when I was a kid and during my parents' day, both parents were factory workers, the Democrats were clearly aligned with the interests of the working class. That's what they were doing. That's the way it was perceived. So there was strong support in those days from the working class. With the outsourcing of jobs, which accelerated it started with Clinton when he signed NAFTA. Now that involved Canada and Mexico, but that opened the doors, which became floodgates as the years went along. And during the 8 years of the Obama administration with Joe Biden, I didn't hear them talking much about stopping that outflow of jobs from China.
What's the evidence that Donald Trump supports the working class? Where is the evidence that anything he's done that that's the case?
Here, here.
Well, he's making a good play for that. You know, he knows how to promote those ideas. Now, whether that's the reality is a separate issue. But what I'm saying is, it's the perception out there, and there's no doubt with hard evidence that the jobs have been allowed by both sides to be outsourced to China and other nations, and the industrial base of the U.S. has been gutted. And that's one of the core issues with the working class and to some extent the middle class as well.
Well, yeah, I think the nature of might say a reactionary populism is to fool the working class and make them think that you're for them when you're screwing them. And I would say the Trump people have been very good at pulling that off. And they see that the Democrats are the Democratic platform, just like an issue on labor. Most of the working people are for a single payer when they poll them. But even the union representatives on the Democratic Central Committee wouldn't support single payer when it came to the platform. So you have your union representatives of the Democrats playing this kind of politics and selling out what should be, talk about people not backing their own interests. Of course, their interest is not the same as the worker on the floor. I mean, these are operators in the union and they're playing politics. But I think that kind of thing renders the workers on the floor, they're going to be vulnerable to other kinds of appeal. They don't see a champion out there among the Democrats who say they have been their champions, but it's just chin music.
Yeah.
The Democrats play. So these people are confused, they're frightened, they're insecure, and Trump is going after them.
But I think, Larry, race is the big elephant in the room here. I mean, I think especially now in 2020, that a lot of the Trump people it's become sort of a cult. I mean, they'll do anything he wants to say, they'll believe anything he says. And secondly, I think it's been a reaction to racism. I mean, I think but I think the country is further along in terms of race right now than it was back in 2016.
Ken, I agree with that. But what I'm saying is, by making injustices and always bringing up during their Democratic convention, whenever they make speeches about all the wounds of racism and slavery and all that, by harping on that so much, you're going to be getting a defensive reaction from white voters.
How do you feel about Jews harping on the Holocaust? Is that harping? Because it's not 400 years old.
Well, I mean, Jews are certainly entitled to talk about the Holocaust.
Then blacks should be entitled to talk about what's happened to them for the last 400 years.
To the extent that every time somebody makes a speech, the white people are reminded that the country was founded on slavery and there are all these injustices, now reparations and all that. What I'm saying is, no matter what you think the real justice is of this or injustice, I'm saying politically, it's not a good strategy for the Democrats, because you're going to get a white backlash and resentment. Whites are saying, I don't consider myself racist, and every time I turn around, white people are being accused of racism. As a political strategy, I don't think it's effective, and the Democrats don't recognize that.
So George, where are you at?
So it's hard to know where to start, Kent. So let me start here. Do I remember that someone in this group said some weeks ago that they were a fan of the TV show Law and Order?
I don't.
Well, either way, there's an episode of Law and Order where the Richard Brooks character basically plays the race card to get his client off. And at a later point in the show, he's talking to the white assistant district attorney who asked him, why did he have to play the race card? And his answer is, everything is about race. And I guess that's the way I feel. Rightly or wrongly, that's the way I feel. Everything is about race. The black jobless rate in June was 17%. The white jobless rate was 12.5%. Black people are disproportionately being infected and dying from this pandemic. It seems to me that the interests of Black people are at the heart of the success or failure of the Democrats in this upcoming election. And I don't think there can be much doubt that the attempts nationwide, including here in the state of Georgia, to suppress votes are specifically designed to suppress Black votes.
Well, they're suppressing Hispanic votes, and Hispanics also have very bad numbers as far as the diseases and the virus, and also on wages. So it's not just Black folks getting it, and then you have a segment of white people, especially in the rural areas, and also in the cities where they used to have good factory jobs that are not there any longer. So there are various people who have various levels of claims of not doing well right now. It would behoove them to figure out how to come together and win an election and have a party that represented their interests rather than go at each other.
A friend of mine sent me an email that had 4 points to it. When 27 people were vying for the presidency, for the Democratic nomination, they said, 1, the person who ends up with the nomination may not be your first choice. 2, the person who ends up with the nomination may not be totally ideologically congruent with you. 3, the person who ends up with the nomination may have made mistakes in their past. 4, get over that shit.
I mean, you always have to make compromises with the candidate you pick. No candidate is pure.
Right.
No candidate is perfect. Yeah, that's true.
A conversation with journalist Larry Sparano. And yes, no candidate is perfect, but there is one candidate who is very, very imperfect.